Hey guys, how's it going? It is Travis Mortz with the ForesthillFilmLab, and today I am finally doing a video on the famous Leica M3. I've had this particular camera for a little over a year now, and I have a long connection with the Leica M3, so I've been waiting to do a video on it because I kind of feel like everybody's done a video on it, but at the same time, I feel like I have something new to say about it. So maybe I will, maybe I won't. Maybe my hard opinions on the Leica M3 will be just what you guys are looking for. So we're going to get to talking about the M3. I'm going to talk a little bit about its history and where it came from, the legacy it's left behind, and then we're also going to get an up-close look of the camera. I'll show you guys how to load it efficiently, and you can see some of the small details that make this camera so special. Alrighty, so the Leica M3. The Leica M3 is a very special camera as far as the Leica legacy goes. Before the Leica M3, Leica had thread mount cameras. And one of their most popular thread mount cameras was the 3F. And that was a thread mounted camera that you had to advance the film like this. It had two windows. There was a rangefinder window where you would focus, and then you would have to move your eye to the viewfinding window. So that was very inconvenient. It also had two shutter speed dials, so for speeds lower than a 30th of a second, you would actually have to turn the dial on the front of the body. And all these things kind of made the Leica thread mount system slower and a little more inefficient than most street photographers were, wanting. At the same time as the Leica thread mount system, Contax had the Contax, 2, 3, and 3A system, which was a combined viewfinder and rangefinder. So, for a long time, Leica was the best optics maker, but as far as their camera bodies go, they were highly copied and they weren't really doing anything too crazy. That being said, the Leica M3 was their first ever M-mount camera. So this was the first in a line of Leica cameras that looked this way. So the M-mount is actually a whole entire different lens mounting system, which is a bayonet system, which started becoming popular with SLR cameras. So they had a bayonet thread mount, or a bayonet lens mount, excuse me. It came with a rapid winding crank. It came with a shutter speed dial that had all of the speeds on the same dial. And it also came with a viewfinder that had a rangefinder and viewfinder combined. And not only did it have a viewfinder rangefinder combined, it was also the biggest and brightest one on the whole entire market. So finally, Leica really brought something new to the table with the Leica M3. And it's kind of weird that the M3 was the first model of this camera, but that is true. That's exactly how it goes. They made the M3, and then the M2, and then the M1, and then the M4, so on and so forth. So I'm not exactly sure why it started out as the M3, but this camera was introduced in 1954 at Photokina. That's when the M3 was finally released to the world, and that's when the legacy of Leica really started to become concrete in the history of photography. They already made their name by inventing, they quite literally invented 35mm photography. And when they started making rangefinder cameras, the Japanese market and Zeiss, of course, got in on it, and they were all neck and neck. But when the Leica M3 came out, that's when things changed. And I do believe that even though Nikon came out with the SP after the M3, I still think that the M3 is a more enjoyable camera to shoot. It's quicker. It has less going on. It has just the right amount of stuff. It's got the, you have a self-timer if you need it. You've got the rewind knob that's nice and discreet. You've got 3 frame lines, but it doesn't have too many bells and whistles. It doesn't have too much. So some of the things about the M3 that's different from other Leicas, and this is what makes the M3 so special for me. This is why I buy an M3. This is the third M3 that I've owned. Yeah, I believe so. This is the third M3 I've owned. I've also owned an M2. I've shot an M2R. I've shot, that's about it. I haven't shot a whole lot of other people's cameras, but I've owned an M2 and I've owned 3 M3s. Now, the thing about the M3 is its native viewfinder, the standard size viewfinder that it comes with, is for a 50mm lens. So that means when you look through the viewfinder, the whole entire window is frame lines, like it should be, but those frame lines are for a 50mm lens. And now for me, when I buy a Leica, I buy the focal length lens that I want. I buy a 50mm because with this kind of camera, you know, yes, it is a bayonet lens mount. It is an interchangeable lens system. But the rangefinder is supposed to be an extension of your arm. It's supposed to, you know, get in the way the least. So because of that, you want a camera that you know the focal length, you know how far away you have to be from your subject. And because of that, the idea of having multiple Leica lenses, for me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. For me, I choose the focal length that I want, and that's my camera now. That's what my Leica has. My Leica has a 50mm. It's always going to have a 50mm. I highly doubt that I'll ever buy a different lens for this camera because the more I shoot with the 50mm, the more I get to know it. And the more I know what 50mm is going to give me. It's going to give me exactly what I want. And now, that's the thing. Because of that, the Leica M3 has the largest viewfinder and the largest rangefinder patch out of all the other Leicas. Because any other camera after this started making frame lines that accommodate wider angle lenses. The M2, for instance, has native 35mm frame lines. So now when you look through there, the outside biggest frame lines are 35mm, which is absolutely excellent if you're shooting 35mm. But if you put a 50mm lens on there, you're actually going to have smaller frame lines in the middle portion of the viewfinder, and it's going to be less of an enjoyable experience, in my opinion. Same goes for the M6. I believe the M6 accommodates a 28 or a 35, therefore making a 50 smaller frame lines. And the rangefinder patch in the M6, I'm sorry, is garbage. It's so tiny. It's minute. So, I mean, the thing is that a true Leica has no light meter. A true Leica is shot by a true professional, and true professionals have a light meter in their pocket or they know the light. So the thing is that a lot of people buy a Leica M6 because it has a light meter. And they throw all the other things out the window. They don't think about the build quality of it. They don't think about the fact that the frame lines might be unenjoyable if you're shooting a 50mm lens. They only think about the fact that it has a built-in meter. That should never be a reason that you buy a specific camera. The reason you buy a specific camera should be for all the other aspects. That is why I always buy a Leica M3, because I care about what I'm seeing in here. A big-ass rangefinder window. The biggest rangefinder window of all the Leica cameras. That's a fact. Look it up. And it also has frame lines that fill the whole entire window for my 50mm lens. And also I have frame lines for, I believe, a 90 and a 135. So I do still have telephoto options, which are the options I would probably go with. And additionally, if I did get a 35mm lens for this camera, it would have built-in goggles, and it would make my viewfinder a wide angle, and I would still have full frame lines and a big old rangefinder patch. So actually, if I did get a 35mm for this, it would have those big goofy goggles, but I would be losing nothing as far as my rangefinder viewfinder experience. Additionally, the M2 was made after this, but it has a on-the-body counter. It doesn't have a built-in window counter. For me, very undesirable. I did not care for that myself. Some M2s also don't have the self-timer. And then after that, the M4 comes along. That has the fast rewind knob and a fast loading system. Those seem really cool. I would love to have an M4. But again, the M3 has the 50mm frame lines I like. And like I said, when you're shooting a Leica, you want to keep the same lens on there. I mean, at all times, just stick with that. I'd be hard-pressed to find a real classic professional photographer that was out changing lenses in the field on his Leica. Just probably not going to happen. For instance, Gary Winogrand. Gary Winogrand shot his Leica with a 28mm lens. But he shot an M4 and he didn't use the rangefinder. What he did was, he used a 28mm viewfinder in the cold shoe, and he would set his distance to be 3 feet. And so he would walk around and just put himself 3 feet from his subject with his 28mm lens. Now, Gary Whittaker never took that lens off. Gary Whittaker always shot with a 28mm. Why? Because that's what he shot with. That was his thing. His look, if you look at his images and you feel that feeling is a 28mm lens on, Kodak Tri-X, or not Tri-X, T-Max push 2 stops. That's what he liked to do. And so, it's almost a way to define your style, even, to not change your lens, to stick with it. I stick with it. My 50mm is my Leica lens. It always will be. I've owned multiple 50mm, and when I'm building up a Leica, that's what I buy. Other tips. There's a little bit of history about the Leica, and other photographers that have used the Leica. Henry Cartier-Bresson. Who else? Gary Whittaker, like I mentioned. I mean, so many people, but I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. Joel Meyerowitz used a Leica. I mean, so many people used it, but as far as the big photographers, this was the weapon of choice. It was quick, it was streamlined, it was quiet, it was super quiet. That was another thing that the Leica really picked up popularity for. It's being so silent. You're able to shoot discreetly. These are some books I just wanted to show you that, I always like to include books in my stuff. This is an Eastman Kodak history of cameras book that I got many years ago. And any book about cameras, any book about photography even, is always going to mention the Leica M3, because the Leica M3 is an iconic camera in the history of photography. It really did change photography as far as rangefinders goes, and as far as the build quality of these cameras. After the M3, everything got better because the bar had been set so much higher than before. Let's see if I can find it in this damn book. I was just looking at it, and now it seems like it's not even in here. Let's see. There's the Nikons. Here we go. We're getting close. I even came to this page, and it said M4, M5, and I said, what the hell? How could they not have the M3? And it was the first Leica in this book, don't you worry. Introduced at Photokina in Cologne, West Germany in 1954, the Leica M3 quickly became a favorite of photojournalists for its silent operation. Many of its features were improvements over previous models. The lens mount changed to bayonet, shutter speeds on a single dial. Viewfinder automatically compensated for aiming errors resulting from the distance between the taking lens and the viewer. The parallax. As you notice, the window is on the heavy side of the left side of the camera. So when your viewfinder is over here, you're actually seeing a whole different perspective. But the Leica actually corrects for that when you're shooting, and what you see really is what you get. That's what that means. The film advanced in shuttercock by means of a lever. The first Leica was a double stroke. 2 short throws, and they're so fun to shoot. And then the later models became a single. And the hinge door on the back was so you could see the film passing through, and you could load it easier, and we'll see that when we load it. And so back in 1954, this camera was $288 for the body, and if you got a 51.5, it would have been $469 for the Leica M3. What an amazing price. Right now, I kind of want to pull up a close-up shot of the camera and just kind of show you guys the details of it. Just show you some of the close-up stuff that makes this camera special. I'll also load a roll of film in there so you guys can kind of see how I do it and get a better understanding of what that back door is for and how it all works. So we'll take a look at the camera, and then after that I'll show you guys some photos made with the M3. Alright, here it is, the Leica M3 in all of its glory. I just wanted to kind of show you guys some details of it and show you some of the things that I like about the camera. Let's see, we'll get nice up and close here. Here's one of my first things that I really love about the camera. One of my favorite bits of detail. And I do have black and white, I know, I'm sorry. But all this stuff it's just a little bit of red accents on there. You're not missing much. But this right here indicates black and white film. This one indicates like a tungsten film, like a color print film, I think. And then this would be like a daylight film. But basically this is an index guide, so you could put it to remember. Like here, we're about to put 400 ISO in there, so let's put it near the 400. I don't use the damn thing, but it's cool. So we got that. Here's our open and close thing. I should probably repaint that, but it says off and zu for open and close in German. This is a nice little turn that actually locks a canister in there. We got the back door, our shutter curtain, all that good stuff. And then here we have a PC mount, and then this is for some old flash I'm never going to use. And then here is the viewfinder. You're not going to be able to see through there, but look at the knurling on that. That is just awesome. This is what I love. Just this metal knurling, you know, little bits of detail. This thing turns when you're advancing film, so you know you got film in there, the centerpiece. Oh yeah, let's get in there. The Leica M3, there's my serial number. Cold shoe. Here's our dial, our shutter speed dial. Nice and easy to turn. Nice knurling on there, look at that. Beautiful. Nice texture on the rewind lever. Here is the film counter. So nice. It's like a little bubble on there too, so you can kind of see. I've got one of these soft release buttons. They're really nice. Makes it a little smoother. This is the rewind lever. This is the self timer lever. Here's our lens release. Small details of the lens. Our focus, as well as our hyperfocal guide for whatever aperture we're at. Here's our aperture ring. So smooth. It only goes to 16 because we're shooting Sony 16, suckers. Here is our lens. Ooh, it's kind of dirty. Pretend it's not. There we go. Now it's not. It still is, but I use this every day. This is my daily camera. This is my beater. It is shot the way that a Leica should be. Used and abused. But there it is. This is a Summicron rigid lens. A cool thing about the Leica lens system is that every name of the lens has a aperture that goes with it. So Summicron is f2, and then there's Summa Lux and Summa Rit and Elmar and Hector and all kinds of different ones that are different apertures. So another way to identify the M3 is if there's a screw right here. That screw tells you that that's an M3. Without that screw, it's an M2. Here's our rangefinder windows. Here is our frame line lever. And I'm going to get into loading this, show you guys how to load the film real quick. So for anyone who's wanting to get one of these cameras, you'll know how. So here is a roll of T-Max, and here is the camera. So let's focus on that thing. Perfect. So this back door, so you can see what the hell's going on. This spool comes out like that, like so. And I like to do it like this. Just kind of feed it in there. You have to put them the same direction like that, but to feed it in, you just gotta slide it in, and you'll see it'll actually fill up that arrow with film. Did you guys see that? See? That's how you know it's in there enough. And then I pull it to length and slide it in. It's a little weird because I have to do it at a distance. And look at that. Perfect. And this window gives me the ability to see if my film's binding, and it's not. So I could close it, hook it on the end, and it's nice with the Leica because it's a closed system, so I can just start shooting right away, and I get a couple extra frames out of a roll, which, if you like that, it's pretty cool. And there she is, the Leica M3, locked and loaded. So now you guys have had a closer look at the camera, and you can see all the the subtleties and the small attention to detail that makes this camera so special. You know, the film ISO guide on the back door, like just little things like that. The counter window is one of my favorite things. The knurling on the dials. All these things just make this camera so special to use, and You know, shooting the Leica M3 is an experience. It's not necessarily just shooting your everyday SLR. You have to kind of be in tune with the camera. You have to kind of get comfortable with it. And the more comfortable you get, the better your results are. You know, the more freely you shoot the camera. For me, when I shoot the Leica, I hardly ever shoot the shutter one time. I almost always will be shooting, and so we'll focus. There's my minimum focus, and I'm always shooting at least twice, because the feeling of getting it moving is what it's made to do. You know, it's made to be shot like that. It's made to be used rapidly and quickly, and you know, capture the scene right now. Take 3, take 4, 5 photos. That's how cameras were shot back then, and that's how I shoot it now. Because if I'm going to shoot a camera like this, I want to be fully part of the experience. Just like with my speed graphic. When I'm shooting my speed graphic, I want to rip that film holder out as fast as I can and flip it as fast as I can, because that's how it was back in the day. You know, that's how you get the photos that you get. Because with a rangefinder, I said it in my last video, but with a rangefinder, all you get, the only information you get are those 2 images lining up, and that's it. So you have no reason to sit and wait. There's no reason to take your time, especially because the Leica M3 has a little bit of leeway. There's a little bit of room for error, especially when you stop down. So that means if I'm about to line up the image and I'm just barely off and I'm at 5.6, it's okay. The focus will be so close that it will be negligible. And so because of that, it's a fun camera to shoot quickly. You know, if you take an M3 out and you shoot it and it takes you 3 or 4 days to get through a roll, your photos aren't going to say anything special. They're going to be sharp photos of, you know, well thought out snapshots. But if you take an M3 out and you burn through a roll in the street in an hour, you're going to start to get the feeling. You're going to start to see a little more motion in your photos. You're going to start to see a little bit more information about the story, because you're going to be shooting more rapidly. You're going to shoot 2, 3 frames of a person, 4 frames of a person, because you can, and because since we don't have the information, since we don't get to see our subject focus through the lens, we should probably take a couple just to be safe, right? I mean, that's really the idea behind it. Take a few because you're shooting with a rangefinder. It's still kind of guesswork in theory. The Leica just have to be so good that when you're close, it's perfect. And so, you know, like I said, keep it moving, shoot a Leica the way it's supposed to be shot. I have the migrant mother back here, just a big old frame, so I can focus on her face, and it's just like a person, you know, she's life-size. So I can focus on her eyes. I also like to use the curves of people's ears, because the ears are close to the eyes. The nose is a good thing to focus on. All these things, these are just little tidbits, little bits of information I like to share with you guys. Become part of the experience. Shoot it. Go watch after this video. Type in Gary Winogrand and go watch Gary Winogrand shoot his Leica. He shoots like a madman. He doesn't even look through the rangefinder. He doesn't look through the viewfinder or anything. He's like this, just moving. He just gets a little view, looks like this, and he's just moving, and it's the most amazing thing. You guys got to see it. I'm going to show you guys a couple photos from the M3 just so you can kind of get an idea that these optics are the absolute best optics in the world. And the thing about rangefinders are the lenses are a little bit closer to the film plane because there's no mirror box in there, and so it just creates that much more sharpness. The light has even less room to travel. It's hitting that film damn near immediately, so the sharpness is unreal. You know, I'll just throw the photos up here like I usually do, but the rangefinder allows you to get those quick moments, those lifestyle moments, but you have to shoot it like a rangefinder. You can't pussyfoot around. No pussyfooting when you're shooting a Leica, or any rangefinder for that matter. Remember that when you're shooting a rangefinder and you're trying to get the whole feel, the essence, the results that you want, you got to shoot it like you mean it. Shoot it like that film costs, you know, $2 a roll. Pretend it's 1980. That's my best piece of advice for you guys. You know, don't be scared. Don't be scared to burn through a roll of film, because if you do, you're going to get the results that you would have never got otherwise. You don't get the candid results if you just shoot once or twice and then wait and put the camera down and oh, you know, it's on my Leica, it's special, blah, blah, blah. No, burn through that shit. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't really have much else to say. I've probably been talking for like 25 minutes already, so you guys are tired of my voice. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to just kind of try to keep making them as I go. Try to be more active on here because I know you guys like it. So thank you so much for watching. Thanks for supporting. And until next time, keep on shooting.